And now it is time for our second and final tour of the morning. This time we are headed to Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. You might be able to tell by my screen that the sun finally came out here. It has been very cloudy all morning. Evergreen Nursery Company was founded in 1864, and it produces more than 3 million liners a year, making it the largest wholesale nursery in Wisconsin, shipping to 27 states and Canada. They grow a variety of evergreen and deciduous trees and shrub species, including hundreds of thousands of cranberry plant liners each year as plugs. Our tour guide today, Ron Amos, started at Evergreen Nursery as a propagator in 1982. After 20 years, he purchased the company in 2001 to become president and owner. A native of Madison, it was only natural that he should receive both his bachelor and master degrees in horticulture from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Ron was past president when I joined the board and may not know the positive role he played in my decision to serve, but he can attest to the 20 questions that I asked him first. Please enjoy our video.
Welcome to the Evergreen Nursery virtual tour. I'm Ron Amos, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about Evergreen Nursery. Evergreen Nursery is run by myself, owner, and Vicki Vanderhoof, who is our vice president and sales manager and does many other things for the operation. We also have Pete Polich, our nursery manager. Dion Martin is our container supervisor, and I want to thank them all for helping with this. But you know, a little bit about Evergreen Nursery. Evergreen Nursery is a liner nursery. We specialize in evergreens, deciduous liners, and birch. A little history about Evergreen Nursery first. Evergreen Nursery was started in 1864 in Sturgeon Bay, just about 5 miles down the road here. And it was started as a 1-acre operation where the owner, George Penny, bought a boat, and he took that boat and sailed up and down Door County and plucked seedlings out of the forests and swamps, put them on steamboats, and steamed them to Chicago, where they went by rail to all over the country and actually into Europe as well. So quite a bit of history at Evergreen Nursery. Just for starting, the nursery did expand over time to 390 acres, which it is currently today. Tom Penny was the last of the Pennies to run the nursery, who I worked for. He was my mentor, and about 20 years ago I purchased the nursery when Tom Penny retired. In Tom's retirement, he still bred birch and kept up with the propagator. So that's a little bit of history. Right now, Evergreen Nursery is located about 1.5 miles from Lake Michigan. We actually got our name Evergreen from we're being in the town of Evergreen. So it's Evergreen Nursery. Our first stop is the head house, where we do all the filling of our trays for plug production for evergreens, trays for deciduous softwood cuttings. We can run 3 to 4 million plugs through this room in a given spring. Our main tray that we use is the 50-cell Sureroot. It's called the Sureroot 50. We fill this here in this room. We use bagged media that we buy in and pre-mix with our formulas. Our basic formula would be peat perlite mixes for the evergreen seedlings, for birch, and for cranberries in various proportions of perlite and peat moss. The softwood cuttings are going to be bark, perlite, and peat moss in various quantities. So those are the main mixes that we use, and this is where we do our filling. We use a Bullen Lawson flat filler and the 2 cubic yard bulk container. This is the production part of our head house. This is where we do, under normal non-COVID years, we would prepare our softwood cuttings. We would prepare cranberry cuttings. We do the softwood cuttings in June and July. We would bring the cuttings in from stock plants, from production plants, bring them here, strip them, prepare them, and then they would be stuck in the houses. And then we spray IBA over the top of those. Most of our work is actually done in the poly houses, not in this production room. We do in February and March cranberry plugs. We will do take cranberry cuttings either off hanging baskets or from cranberry from beds. We'll prepare them in here, prepare about 2.5, 3-inch cuttings, and those will be stuck in trays in the greenhouses. So those are the two of the main crops that we do in here. Behind me are the seed germination chambers. We use those for seeding birch that we transplant by hand. We just do a number of varieties that way. We seed them in flats, and then they germinate. As soon as they emerge, we move them to a cooler greenhouse that's adjacent to this room. We do some evergreen seedlings. Most of our evergreen seedlings, of course, we direct seed, but there's a few stubborn varieties we will seed in flats and actually hand transplant. The chambers are also ideal for extracting seed from cones. We'll collect our cones of mugo pines, various other pines, and some firs, and we will put them on racks, wire racks, and place them in the germination chambers. And we have plastic on the fronts of them so that it'll get 80, 85 degrees, enough to open the cones so we can extract the seed, and then we will clean the seed in here. We also do seed germination tests in here. In February, before we start direct seeding, we will take our seed and test it all to make sure that it's a high enough germination so we can direct seed efficiently. We do have a cooler and a freezer in here for our seed. We store quite a bit of seed. I try to keep a 5-year supply of all the different species that we would seed. So we have good climate control over taking care of our seed. We also do seed stratification. We have a cooler where we will moisten our seed, putting it in moist peat moss or perlite, and it will be kept at 45 degrees for about 2 to 3 months, depending on the species. Some species we will do warm stratification in the fall and then do a cold stratification. So we have different stratification criteria depending on the species. Something we do at Evergreen Nursery is that every morning we gather and do stretching, and we do 5 minutes of stretching just to get everybody limbered up and ready to go. And then we have our whiteboard where we put our daily crew activities, who's doing what, so everybody knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, with COVID, we are not stretching in here right now. We're entering at different times. We're not gathering, so we're trying to keep protocol. So we've had a number of months of not doing our normal stretching, but we find that it's very important to gather each morning under normal circumstances and stretch, talk about the board, talk about daily things, talk about safety. So it's one of the routines we've had for a number of years that unfortunately right now we're not doing. Continue our tour. We're stopping here at the Evergreen plug house where we do our evergreen seeding. We start here with our plugs. This is a 50-cell evergreen seedling plug. This starts in March, April, or May. That's when we seed. We'll fill our trays using, this is the 50-cell sureroot. We actually originally designed our own tray. We found it was difficult to find a tray that had a large hole on the bottom for root pruning and good ridges that prevent the roots from circling. So we developed our own with very deep inset ridges and a large hole on the bottom. We used that for a number of years, and then we found this 50 sureroot, which does a really good job. So kind of a timetable, we'll seed this house in March. We'll clear the house out. We'll fill the house with racks. It's basically a rack is a little mini bench that holds 10 trays, has no bottom to it, so we get good open root pruning. They're up on blocks. We'll seed using a seeding machine, 3 seeds per cell, 2 seeds per cell, depending on the germination of the seed or the type of seed. And those will go into the house here. They're covered with rice hulls. Rice hulls are used to prevent algae, moss, liverworts. So we use that. So that they're seeded, they're put in place, watered. Then they emerge. Once the seedlings emerge, they are singled out, so we get 1 seed per cell. Something interesting too, as they grow, they're growing under a 30% opacity poly. So we've got clear plastic on bottom, white poly on top, and then they're heated to about 55 degrees during the day, 45 at night, until they germinate, grow. they stay under the poly until usually about July. We open the sides right after frost in June to get good air movement. You'll see the screen sides, or the sides which are open. Actually, this one's not screened because we're replacing it right now. But they'll have screen sides, but they'll be covered on top. That prevents washouts from thunderstorms. Once they get to July, they're able to handle with thunderstorms. We uncover the house, and the plants are allowed to grow in the open. And they will continue to grow here until November, when we get a good hard freeze. We want to be hardy at about 20 degrees before we actually cover the house. If we were to actually seed these and just let them grow through the summer, they would probably grow about an inch tall, set bud, and be done for the season. Since we're interested in really having plants that are going to be 6 to 8 to 10 inches tall by the season, we use intermittent lighting. So what we do is we have floodlights at the end of each house, and 2 in the middle, which you can probably see there, and I'll show you more pictures of that, come on 3 minutes every 30. What they do is interrupt the night. By interrupting the night, we're able to get the plants to continue to grow continuously. Typically day lengths start to decrease in mid or late June, and that really tells the plants to stop growing. We can keep them growing until we turn the lights off, which is typically in mid-August. Behind me is a house of white pine. These were seeded in March, and you kind of get an idea of size-wise what we get in one season. This is a very nice size for transplanting, good root structure, no circling, and it's a very nice size for putting into either a 3.5 squared by 5 inch deep pot. It could go into a 1 gallon. We use these in our field operation, but it's going to give you an idea of what a white pine would look like. A seedling crop that's somewhat unique to us is the Mugo pine. We've been growing Mugo pines for many years, and actually we have our own strain of Mugo pine that we developed. Actually, when I started at the nursery 38 years ago, I was doing breeding on pines, and we've come up with our own strain that we grow from seed. Unique about our Mugo pine, of course we seed it like we do our other crops, but when the Mugo pine seedling gets to a certain size and we've got good root growth for the season, usually by mid-July, late July, we'll take the seedlings, which usually just have one stem, and we'll run them through a conveyor with a lawnmower on top of it and prune them so that we get branching, so we get a nice branched plug. So we start that branch at a very young age, so we get a nice, it basically takes a year off of the production of this plant. So this will go to our pots, it'll go to the field, but it's just a nice little liner, just a little shrubby liner we just do by pruning them in the middle of summer. By October, our evergreen seedling plug is finished and actually ready to be potted or planted. This time of year, we will take our evergreen seedlings and we'll put them into our 3.5 square by 5 inch deep pot. So we'll pot these in October so they get a little bit of time to root in. The tops are dormant, just root in so that they will establish nicely as a liner. So this is 1 year later. This was planted last October. If you can see behind me, this is a house of Black Hills spruce. We just covered this house actually this morning, getting ready we have about 120 poly houses to cover this fall, so we're just starting to get these covered now that we're getting freezing temperatures. So this is 1 year later from a plug, and what's unique about I guess where we live in Door County is that we have a very nice native mycorrhizae fungus. It invades the plants at a very early age, often in the plug, but in this size pot here, we'll see if I pull this one out, we'll see that the root system it's like a white white fungus all over, which it is. This is it's an ectomycorrhizae, but it's hard to see, but close up you can see actually when a mycorrhizae infects a root system, it causes very heavy branching, multiple breaks, and you can see that in here. So even though it looks like, oh, this looks, and we used to have questions, people say that looks like it's a diseased root system, but actually it's a very healthy root system because it's filled with mycorrhizae. If you even look at the top, you'll see the fruiting bodies, and we were actually able to identify what mycorrhizae it is. But it's very beneficial. Once again, we pot these in October. They're covered, they overwinter. In spring, we take the covers off, they get fertilized, they get herbicided, and they grow through the season. This is what we get in one season. It's, like I said, we really manage our fertility, keep our phosphorus a little bit low so we can really encourage the mycorrhizae.
Our next stop is the potting shed to look at our 1 gallon evergreen potting.
We're potting 1 gallon evergreens right now. We're using our R-Pack, or it's like a ready root pot. It's got the slatted sides like the ready root. We prefer this one over ready root. We have used ready root. We like this one because it's got a larger bottom. It's squattier and just broader, so it doesn't tip over as easily. So it's a nice pot, gives us good pruning, and it makes a really nice seedling, or a nice finished product. The plants are potted and then go onto a conveyor belt, and we move our plants on airline baggage carts. Actually, what these are, just baggage carts that have been modified. They track well, they go between houses real well, and a lot of times you can get them pretty cheap. So this is just a typical airline baggage cart that we put shelves in and hook to a tractor, and they work well.
Now we're heading to the container evergreen growing area.
Behind me is an example of our 1 year ready root pot. This is the ready root that we potted a year ago, basically last fall at this time. This is in the, as we call the R-Pack, similar to a ready root pot. So this is a plug grown for 1 more year, placed in the houses behind me. This will be overwintered in this house. It'll flush one more time, and then it'll be a finished plant. So this is the second year. It'll go to third year. We then take these out of their pots, we net them on a netting machine, and we ship these out without the pots. We can reuse these pots hopefully for up to 10 years. So they have a very nice root system. See this one here? Okay, this is mycorrhizae, a very nice mycorrhizal infection. Here, if you look at the roots go down, and they do not circle, so it's very nice root system. Like I said, we like to see this real nice mycorrhizae fungus on here. So good root system, has 1 more year to go in here, get very nice lateral roots, nice root pruning in this pot. This is a finished 1 gallon R-Pack spruce. This is a white spruce that we potted 2 years ago. You see it was put in as a plug, put 2 flushes on, so we get a nice plant. Once again, in that R-Pack pot, so we get very good root systems. Nothing circling, everything going down, being pruned off by air. So it's a very nice plant. We're really happy with that from a plug. So we basically are root pruning this, or root training this from the plug all the way to the finish. This is our 5 gallon evergreen program. This is a program where we take a bare root 4-year-old plant from our field and pot it into a 5 gallon pot. We prune the roots a little bit, pot them, and this is done usually early September to mid-October. The reason we do it then is that the roots on the evergreens are most active in spring and again in late summer. So we try to harvest the plants, get them when they are in the most active root, the root growth, and we then pot them into the pots. Then they produce their own roots, or new roots in fall, so they're ready to go in spring. When they put out new growth, they put out a nice flush of growth. We cover them with shade cloth when we first pot them, and we'll mist them about every hour for the first few days, and then several times a day for the next couple of weeks. Behind me is an example of our 5 gallon evergreens that we potted last September. We potted them in September, the roots grew out, and then they were basically dormant. In spring they put out a new flush of growth that was just really a nice flush because the roots are already established. So then these are finished. We ship most of our 5-gallon evergreens actually the following fall from potting, but also in spring because they just turn out very nicely. Planting in fall, establishing roots before spring is always a great idea with evergreens, and we try to do that wherever we can to get that good root establishment.
Let's head to our birch growing areas.
Behind me is a house of Royal Frost birch. This is a birch that we developed ourselves. It's a cross between white spire and white spire crossed with a purple Szechuan birch. So this is something we developed ourselves. We grow these in our field. We also grow these in our 3-gallon ready root pots, and this is in a 3.5 square by 5-inch deep pot. So it's just one of the birch we do. We specialize in birch, as you'll see that we have the perfect climate for growing birch. These are ones we grow in our container area. Most of our birch we will grow actually in our field, and you'll see that a little bit coming up here. But birch being a specialty for us, the reason it is because we have an ideal climate for it. We are about 1.5 miles from Lake Michigan here. It stays cool. We rarely get a 90-degree day. It's just ideal conditions. Lots of sun, a very windy area, so the birch toughen up, they have nice strong stems. We start most of our birch from seed or from propagated rooted cuttings. We do our own seeding. We collect our own seed. We have seed block where we'll pick seed. It's isolated from other species, so it's pure seed. We'll collect that, dry the seed down, then clean the catkins and use that seed in spring for most of our varieties other than river birch. We'll take that seed it in March into flats. We hand transplant this into plugs into April, and then from there they will go by June 1st. We're frost free usually by June 1st. They'll go to either our field operation where they're put in beds, 5 rows per bed, and that's done on our ridge area, we call it. It's near Lake Michigan, and we're there about less than 1 mile from Lake Michigan. It's even cooler. It could be 5 to 10 degrees cooler than what we have here at the nursery. So once again, very nice place. Plants grow slow. They have excellent sandy soil for nice root systems. So we grow our bare root birch.
The birch plants will grow all summer and into fall. We will harvest them in November using a Lundeby plant lifter. We'll bring the plants into the cooler. Then in wintertime, we will pull them out, grade them, bundle them, put them back into the cooler for spring shipping.
This is one of our birch ready root houses. We grow birch of different species. We'll grow seeded varieties, white spire, heritage, seeded river birch, all grown in the 3-gallon ready root pot. We seed in March, transplant into plugs in April, and put these into the pots in June once we're frost free. We'll use micropropagated plants that we get in as rooted cuttings, put those into plugs in April, and then they'll come in here in June. One of the birch crops that we grow is the 38 cell river birch. We grow our river birch from seed. It's a rather unique crop is that we will seed it in June with usually fresh seed that we get at the end of June. We'll seed it right away into flats, and then we actually will germinate the seedlings, and they will be hand transplanted into a 38 cell. So this is, you can see behind us, the 38 cell. River birch are very quick growing, so from basically the end of June until now, we've got a plant that's almost 2 feet tall. River birch is rather unique because the seed, like many of the plants that produce seed in summer, the seed doesn't hold, it's not viable through the next year. So we take that fresh seed right away, seed it, and get it going so we can transplant it and get our seedlings. And it's a pretty consistent crop. We get that seed every year, we use it fresh, and we get usually a very nice seedling, nice root system on it. So once again, this is our 38 cell river birch crop.
Our next stop is the Matthew Evergreen Liner Fields, just about a half mile north of the nursery.
Right now we're stopped at our Evergreen Nursery field operation. We have an 80-acre operation a little bit off the nursery. This is our Matthew operation, where we are right now harvesting Colorado spruce for potting into 5-gallon. Typically what we do here is we plant in beds, 5-row beds, where we take our plugs, plant those, and grow those for 3 years. Then we'll harvest them using a Lundby plant lifter. And they're going into these pallets. They'll go inside, get root pruned, and then go up to potting. This is also what we do in October and November. We'll harvest evergreens, freeze them in our 28-degree freezer for shipping in spring.
Back in from the field, we are stopping our packing and storage building.
Behind me is our shipping area. This is where we assemble our orders for shipping either by semi or LTL. The LTL orders will go inside the building behind me, which is our packing cooler freezer building. The building behind me, which is mostly freezer and cooler, we use for storing birch trees. What we do is harvest in November. The birch trees are graded and then go into the cooler. It's a specialized cooler in that it is very high humidity. Birch really require a lot of humidity and actually wet stems to overwinter properly. The freezer is used for bareroot evergreens. When we bareroot our evergreens in usually October, November. Once we have a hard freeze on our evergreens, we will harvest them, pack them in pallets, like you see the box pallets behind me, and they'll go into our freezer at 28 degrees. So they're packed roots out to the side, top to top, and put in pallets with liners. So it's very important that we keep them moist but not wet and frozen. We also will store plugs for freezing for field planting. We'll freeze those in crates and boxes. They will go in the plugs are pulled out of the trays in winter, put into flats that fit our planting machine. Those go into the pallets and those will be frozen. The other part of our building is the packing and LTL. We'll do UPS shipping through there. We'll fill our LTL shelved pallets in that part. We have a loading dock on the other side for the LTL shipping, and we also do Home Depot fulfillment. We take our little liners and we ship those actually for Home Depot. Just little evergreens, little deciduous plants, little fruit trees, or fruit plants I should say, and those all go through there as well. So we have a UPS and FedEx shipping station in that building. So a lot of things go in that building in spring and fall. Right now behind me we have an order just being assembled, ready to go out on a truck.
Our next stop is the softwood shrub liner houses.
This is one of our softwood houses that we use in June and July for rooting our cuttings. So what we do is we bring our cuttings in June and July, strip them, prepare them, and then we'll stick them directly into a 51 cell tray. We used to direct stick into a larger cell, hoping that we could then finish that product in a 3.5 square by 5 inch deep pot and have it for sales for spring. Our seasons are so short here, we really don't even start our softwood cutting production until early June, and that just doesn't give us enough time to root and produce a plant that's large enough for sales in spring. So we root most of our softwood cuttings in a 50 cell tray. We will overwinter those and then in spring pot those into a 3.5 square by 5 inch deep pot. It just gives us a better plant, we're assured that it'll be finished, well branched and well rooted. So another thing we do is that when we direct stick all of our cuttings in our 50 cell trays, we use an IBA spray. We'll at the end of the day or beginning of the following day, we'll spray all of our softwood cuttings prepared that day, and then 1 week later we will spray them again with our IBA solution. It does a really nice job for stimulating roots. We also use a Netafim rooting mist nozzles in here with the phytotronic controls, and we're able to really control our mist very well. So this is our one of our softwood cutting houses.
A crop unique to Evergreen Nursery is cranberry plug production. Cranberry is an important crop in Wisconsin, and we work with breeders to get their introductions to growers faster. The average yield of cranberries in Wisconsin is 250 barrels per acre. A barrel is 100 pounds. The new varieties can yield 5 to 600 barrels per acre. The most common method of producing cranberries is to mow off 1 ton of cranberry vines of a given variety and spread that on a new planting bed, so it's 1 ton of vines per acre. The vines root and are in full production about 3 years. This method requires a large amount of vines to produce a new variety. To produce an acre of cranberries only requires 50 pounds of vines. This gets a new variety to production much faster, especially with limited amount of vines. We can also grow cranberry vines in hanging baskets in greenhouse conditions to assure that the crosses are not contaminated with other varieties. We start in February with vines and cut them into 3-inch sections. They are bundled to ensure that they have proper polarity. We stick into 98 cell trays on a conveyor. The trays are placed in the greenhouse with mist applied. We do not use rooting hormones. The cuttings will root and grow until they are ready for planting in early June. The trays can be easily shipped on shelved pallets. This is something that keeps us very busy in the winter months.
Thank you for being on the virtual tour of Evergreen Nursery. It was nice to have you with me, and I hope sometime in the future we can do this again in person. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ron. That was great. Ron and I have a lot of connections. We grow 40,000 birch for him here at our tissue culture lab. And he was actually my father's grad student. And my father worked a lot on cranberries. So yay, cranberries for Wisconsin. Ron, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we do have some questions for you. Thank you so much for doing that tour. That was awesome. I know I called you up and said, hey, can we get a tour? I've been wanting to get IPPS there for a while, so this was a great way to do it. So thank you. Let's see, we're going to start with a question here from Anna. And her question is, what kind of bulbs are you using for the intermittent lighting on conifers?
We use 1,000-watt quartz halogen. It's just it's a really warm spectrum light, so we use the quartz for that. So they're 1,000-watt bulbs.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Shelby asked, which species do you give a warm stratification to in fall?
We do. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen or my camera on here. But anyways, we Juniperus virginiana is the main one we warm stratify. A couple other Juniper species, Osteosperma, a couple of the different ones we will do that way. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you get, there we go.
There we go. Okay.
There he is. Hi. Nice to see you. Let's see here. Let's see. Do you use any controlled release fertilizer at seeding or sometime thereafter?
At seeding in our evergreen, actually evergreens, cranberries, we use a mini prill, Osmocote mini prill. Then we use Harolds for all of our containers, quart, 1 gallon, or 3.5 square by 5-inch deep pots. 1 gallons, 5 gallons, we use Harolds. It's a 19510.
Okay. What is the concentration of IBA on the cuttings?
We start with 1,000 KIBA. Since we have such a short season, by end of July, when we're just still doing a few cuttings, we may up it to 1,500 parts per million IBA. But in general, it's 1,000 parts per million.
Okay. Let's see here. Todd asked, how do you decide what new liners to grow?
Well, when it comes to the deciduous, we do a lot of proven winners. So we look at ones that are hardy in our area, ones that are going to be successful for our customers. So a lot of it has to do with hardiness. They have to grow in our area, they have to be very tough. Other things too, of course, popularity. Evergreens, we look at just really where the market is. We are working on a lot of new species. We probably have 20, 30 species that we're looking at with all the problems with Colorado spruce and other species with needle diseases. We are doing quite a few trials on, unfortunately, Asian species because they are more likely resistant to the diseases. So we just look at demand. We have a lot of pre-orders. So a lot of what we do is either pre-order or contract growing. So it's kind of determined for us.
Okay, nice answer. Let's see here. NK asks, does the same nursery inspector inspect all the birch and conifer production facilities shown in the video?
Yes, we have one person. She comes back repeatedly and she does a great job. She's very knowledgeable and has been doing it for many years.
Okay, let's see. Liana asks, I have a question. We grow Picea glauca conica plugs and liners in Chilliwack, BC, Canada. Would using the floodlights in the same way he described, 3 minutes every 30 minutes, be helpful to get more growth in one season for the species as well?
I would think so. We were rooting dwarf Alberta at one time as well, and we did put lights on them to get extra growth. Yes.
Great. Let's see here if I can find any more questions. Do you seed the mycorrhiza?
No, it's just something natural that's in our air. Years ago, I tried buying different mixtures in, trying different things, but just by keeping our fertility where, we have fairly high fertility at times, but we always learned that keeping the phosphorus levels a little bit lower would encourage mycorrhizas. So it's in our air, it's just native, and we're very fortunate that we have such a good strain or strains where we are.
Yeah, it's just a nice area all around. I have one question. What struggles have you seen with COVID this year?
Well, we do use H2A labor, and so it's important that we keep them safe. We have done whatever we can to keep them isolated. It's been tough for them because they have not been able to get out as much as they have in the past. Our regular our full-time employees, we punch in at different times. We keep distancing. We talk about this daily. We wear masks where appropriate. When you're out in the field harvesting plants, it's very hard to wear a mask, and we sort of isolate by groups, and it seems to work well. But riding vehicles, people wear masks. Anytime people are close together, they wear masks. If they are actually, we try to actually not have people ride together in vehicles when we can. We just try to keep people as separated as possible. We've been lucky. We've only had one case, which was just not even related to the nursery, but it was related to the husband of one of our people. He got it, then she got it. So we're very conscious of that. My wife's a kindergarten teacher going to school right now. I worry about it every day. So
I think are we out of time, Sophie? Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Ron, for that fabulous video and answering our questions.
Well, thank you.